Are Ukraine and Russia trading drone strikes as they both prepare for their next attack? And where is Ukraine going to be targeting next? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 1st, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, there hasn't actually been an update in the control map, so we're going to take a look at the combat map. And as you guys can see, Russian forces conducting offensive actions, pretty localized, right? A series of attacks here north of Satove, as well as south of Donetsk City. And they are, again, launching some level of counterattacks near Oruzane, as well as a smattering of artillery fire across the front lines. And there's been several stories that report that the total volume of Russian artillery fire has gone down. And you see that here, right? What used to be almost an unbroken wall of artillery now looks more like a scattering. And while I won't say for sure that this isn't just the mappers consolidating some of these icons, I think it's also highly possible that it's reflective of increased pressure on Russian logistics. Supposedly, the bridge here near leading from Crimea along the M18 highway to Melitopol remains out. And that is a significant disruption to Russian resupply efforts as they try to move material to Melitopol and subsequently to the front lines. So again, I think this is reflective of Ukraine's strategy of applying lots of logistic pressure to Russian forces in an effort to make it easier when they do push to ensure that they're best able to. We're going to have to use ISW's control map simply because, again, the usual control map isn't updated. But let me know if you guys like this. The yellow represents areas that Russia claims it controls. Blue is, of course, recently liberated Ukrainian territory, and red represents assessed Russian control. So as you can see, lots of contested territory outside of Robotyne. And this does not actually have this substantial carve out where supposedly some maps, including the control map, has Ukrainian forces operating but not necessarily controlling. I think it's possible, but I was looking on Twitter earlier and I couldn't find any evidence of Ukrainian forces operating in the Novoprokopivka area beyond just like total rumor. When we look over to the east, you can see outside of Staromayorsk, which has been liberated, basically this is delineating the river here as the source, the boundary between Russian-controlled Oruzane and Ukrainian-controlled Staromayorsk. I think probably you're seeing Ukrainian forces consolidate their gains. As you can see, Russian forces in Oruzane are in a tight spot. They literally have Ukrainian forces to their east, west, and north. And I suspect strongly that this is going to be the next target for Ukrainian forces to liberate. I think they're going to try to apply a lot of pressure from this eastern side. Again, remember, this is so small. This is, maybe 2,000 feet. So, 800 meters, easily targetable with small arms, as well as Ukrainian forces to the north. So driving the Russians out of Oruzane is going to be it'll be a task, but Ukrainian forces have the advantage of basically 3 support by fire positions. Very, very tough for remaining Russian defenders or Russian troops holding Oruzane to maintain the defense. Of course, if you want a breakdown of the combat footage, I might even try to drop one today. CombatVetNews.com is the place. It's also the way to support what I do. It gets you access to members only content where we check out all the viral combat videos, totally uncensored. We see the raw, unfiltered footage from the front lines that really gives us insights that you can't get anywhere else. We saw, for example, a Chechen ambush up close and personal in this one. In this other one, we saw Russian soldiers being forced out of their trenches and then hit with artillery fire. So if you're interested in those sort of breakdowns, combatvetnews.com is the place for it. Let me put my head back where it belongs. In other news, we're seeing, of course, a significant information being reported about what I found fascinating is about Russia's efforts to basically purge occupied territories of Ukrainians. They said that the Russian Federation, and this is, by the way, a Kremlin-appointed official, said on July 31st that Russia has transferred 5 million Ukrainians, including 700,000 children, to the Russian Federation since the beginning of the war. I want to point out, I hope, so that many of these children are orphaned, but the majority, I suspect, are just are children with their parents. And the many Ukrainians in the occupied territories, right, speak Russian. They've been given Russian passports. Some are almost certainly refugees who are not allowed to relocate to other places in Ukraine, but were trapped behind Russian lines. So some of these things are simply probably necessary relocations based on the location, the specific towns that fighting is happening. But a lot of this, 5 million, is a tremendous number. And the Soviet Union had, for much of its history, a pretty long and robust policy of changing the ethnic makeup of regions and Russifying them in many cases, right? Moving ethnically European Russians to areas that were seen as being a little too much of a hotbed of different ethnic and linguistic identities. And that playbook seems to be being run again in the occupied regions of Ukraine. And the idea for Russia would be that even if these regions were to be liberated, there wouldn't be any people who identify as Ukrainian in them. The people that live there would in turn identify as Russian. And so they would always be sort of a restive, separate province of Ukraine. Obviously, this is all framed as humanitarian gestures of goodwill. And while, again, some of these people are almost certainly forced war refugees, it's too similar. This is just too similar to Soviet era sort of repopulation policies that were draconian, forced, and some level of like cultural destruction. Right, removing a traditional people from their homeland. And again, the more appropriate way to support Ukrainian refugees. And this is something that I can't talk too much about it, but in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be launching a project that it will be helping Ukrainian refugees, civilians who have been forced from their homes and are in need of humanitarian assistance. So stay tuned for that. Again, as more things come up, I'm going to be able to talk more about it. The only other note that I thought was pretty interesting is, again, you can see here from the news that there's a lot. Russia says a Ukrainian drone has hit a Moscow tower, and in turn, a Russian missile strike killed 4 in Zelensky's hometown in central Ukraine. Drones have hit a Ukrainian dorm in Kharkiv. So we're seeing, again, it seems like there's a cyclical effort where, as both sides sort of refit their forces and prepare for another phase of offensive action, they work back relying on drone strikes in sort of striking each other with drones and missiles in order to keep up the pressure in a way that doesn't tax their ground forces. So an interesting sort of look at what is going on here. Anyway, guys, as always, thank you so much to the members of combatvetnews.com, especially our Colonel tier members, and of course, our Lieutenant tier members. I really couldn't do this without you guys, sincerely, and I appreciate you so much, and I hope you guys have a good one. See you later.